Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is nonviolence and reconciliation, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about nonviolence and reconciliation Dr. Bernard Lafayette, the president of American Baptist College. And Dr. Lafayette, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you.
Dr. Lafayette, you know, we've had you on the show a number of times, and we've talked about a number of interesting things. And today we're going to talk about nonviolence and reconciliation. But before we get into that, let's talk about Dr. Bernard Lafayette, and to have him to give us some information about his background, his education, and some of the things that were important and significant in your life in leading you to the presidency of American Baptist College.
Well, thank you very much. It's an interesting journey to come to American Baptist College back in 1958 from Tampa, Florida, graduated from high school, and to pursue an education in Bible theology at the American Baptist Theological Seminary, it was called in those days. It's since become the American Baptist College. The experience was one that I felt was destined, because I had gotten a 4-year scholarship to Florida A&M University in there in Tallahassee. But I was led to the American Baptist Theological Seminary because of my interest in theology and Bible studies and that sort of thing. It was fortuitous that I was here at a time when we had the sit-in movement, and it was ready-made for me because I had long wanted to be involved in helping to bring about those kind of social changes. I never did agree with segregation as a child, and it was something that I disdained, and the cruelty, the punishment, and unnecessary injustices suffered by people of color. I felt that whenever I had an opportunity to do something about it as an adult, that I would take advantage of that. And surely, at the age of 20, I got involved in the sit-ins right here in Nashville. This catapulted me into these freedom rides of '61 and summer work and a stint with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I was one of the founders. We founded it back in 1960 in Raleigh, North Carolina, Shaw University, where a number of us, Diane Nash, Marion Barry, Jim Bevel, John Lewis, all of us were involved from Nashville and participated. James Lawson was our mentor because he taught us about nonviolence. He had studied in India with Gandhi's followers. So we really got a in-depth knowledge of nonviolence as a philosophy. I later went on to work with Martin Luther King and helped to lay the groundwork for the Selma movement and Chicago movement and the spring mobilization against the war in Vietnam, and ultimately was appointed by Martin Luther King as the national coordinator for the Poor People's Campaign, which was his last campaign, and a staff position with his organization was the National Program Administrator. So my job was to supervise all of the directors of various programs. Hosea Williams, who was over voter registration, and Jesse Jackson over PUSH, and Jim Bevel over direct action, and all of those colleagues of mine with whom I grew up. I was second in line to Honorable Andrew Young as the vice president for the organization. I stayed with Martin Luther King until his death in Memphis, Tennessee, in the course of developing the Poor People's Campaign. I was with him in the morning before his assassination. And one of the things Martin Luther King said to me was that he wanted us to, at all costs, to embrace nonviolence and not to abandon it, because he predicted that violence would prevail during this period, but that in the near future, violence will take its course, and that people will understand that nonviolence is a better way. And sure enough, his prophecy, once again, has come true. After Martin Luther King's assassination, I went to Boston University Law School and then pursued my education at Harvard University, a graduate school of education, where I received a master's and a certificate of advanced study and the doctorate in education. And my focus was the pedagogy for nonviolence, because of what Martin Luther King said. He wanted us to do serious study, and so I could do no less than to try to get the best possible education in nonviolence. And of course, I have degrees in administration as well. And I've been a school principal and deans of various institutions, Alabama State University, Lindenwood College in Louisville, and St. Louis, professor and director of Peace Studies program at Gustavus Adolphus College in Minnesota. So I worked with various educational programs across the country. And I was selected to come to Nashville once again as the Vice President for Academic Affairs at the American Baptist College under Dr. McLothian. And when he resigned from presidency there, I was asked by the Board of Trustees to assume the presidency. So that's a brief sort of journey for Dr. Lafayette.
And so you've been involved in a number of very, very significant nonviolent kinds of activities over your career, Dr. Lafayette, beginning with the student nonviolent activities that you were involved in. I tell you, let's look at, since this program is nonviolence and reconciliation, let's have you to give us what you might consider to be a prescription for nonviolence. What does it take in order to create an environment of nonviolence?
Well, the first thing, Dr. Haney, it requires is extensive training and education, because nonviolence is not only of the heart, it's of the head. And when people begin to understand the basic principles of nonviolence and the various steps, there are 6 principles and 6 steps that Martin Luther King laid out, and we call it Kingian nonviolence. And once you can understand that nonviolence is really for the courageous, it doesn't take much courage to use violence against another person, but nonviolence starts with the courage of the individual to face violence and to apply nonviolence in the face of violence. The first step, then, principle deals with the issue of having the courage to stand up in the face of situations that are very dangerous, realizing that you're armed with some superior force of nonviolence. We talk about nonviolence and versus violence. We do not think of nonviolence as being the antithesis of violence. It is not the opposite. Some people say, well, choose between violence and nonviolence. Well, see, we consider violence not a method to solve problems. Violence is what people use when they can't find a method. They resort to violence until they find a method to solve the problem. Violence is an illness. Nonviolence is the antidote. Nonviolence can cure violence, but violence cannot lead to nonviolence. Violence can only lead to more violence. So the proper understanding of nonviolence as a philosophy and as a way of life carries with it a set of principles, strategies, and skills that require one, first of all, to make a self-assessment. Many times we contribute to the violence even though we may be unaware. Sometimes our behavior, our attitude, our perception of the problem. Many people get angry over situations and try to attack the person. But nonviolence teaches us that we do not attack the person, but we attack the problem.
Okay, and then of course, Dr. Lafayette, let us have our first break, and we'll be back and talk about the other aspects of